Today, the world is teetering on the brink of chaos. Protests sweep the globe. We are seeing historic changes taking place on a scale that hasn't occurred since World War II. This has many believing we are experiencing the end of days. Prophecy says we can expect to see Four Horsemen as a precursor to Armageddon. The first horseman of the apocalypse is mentioned in Revelations 6:2.
I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest.
This is the leader of the horsemen and is most commonly interpreted as the Antichrist. The first horseman could also be considered a leader, maybe like the world leaders we see today, who, as long as they are okay in their gilded towers, continue to push for world conflict. The second horseman is a fiery red one and the harbinger of war. His arrival signifies the outbreak of a conflict that will engulf the planet. He leads the way for the final two riders, who will claim the lives of those that survived the battles. The world is very close to global conflict, with relations between the big three powers, the US, China, and Russia, being at an all-time low, and each of these nations face an increasing amount of conflict amongst their own populaces. The third rider of the apocalypse is mounted on a black horse and carries a pair of scales, and is associated with famine. Today, we see an ever-increasing gap between those that have and those that do not. The global economic systems that have long dealt with the monies of the world are now beginning to crumble. The final horseman is probably the most infamous: Death. Sitting upon a pale steed, he ushers in the end of days and the final battle between good and evil. Those that have religious inclinations follow this idea, but is there any science to back it all up? Terrifyingly, there is. So let's take a look. Welcome to IF, videos on the paranormal, cryptozoology, and ufology. Hit that subscribe button and ring that bell so you never miss a video again. So, is the world coming to an end? There have been a number of leading scientists that have made predictions of late that say we as a species are on the brink of going extinct. The time frame for these extinction events vary from as little as 10 years to a century, until we see the world around us die. Let's take a look at how and why they believe the apocalypse is upon us, and ask if it's too late to turn the clock back. Let's begin with the 12-year prediction. A team of world-leading climate scientists have come together with a plan to keep the warming of the planet to a level less than 1.5 degrees Celsius. This measurement is the point at which they say there will be a huge jump in the severity of drought, floods, extreme heat, and poverty for hundreds of millions of people on the planet. Nicholas Stern spoke to world leaders saying, "It's a line in the sand, and what it says to our species is that this is the moment and we must act now." Deborah Roberts, a co-chair of the working group on impacts, said, "This is the largest clarion bell from the science community, and I hope it mobilizes people and dents the mood of complacency." His greatest fear is the recent shift he sees in attitudes towards climate change. Donald Trump has promised to withdraw the US, the world's biggest source of historical emissions, from the Paris Accords. The first round of Brazil's presidential election saw Jair Bolsonaro in a strong position to carry out his threat to do the same and also open the Amazon rainforest to agribusinesses. This could have dangerous results for the world's climate. If temperatures rise to 2 Celsius, there will be extremely hot days such as those experienced in the Northern Hemisphere this summer, and they would become more severe and more common. This would increase heat-related deaths and cause more forest fires as a start. Long term, it would lead to a rising sea level, high acidity in the oceans, and lower oxygen levels, this killing off much sea life. They say these events will compound the issue and begin a motion that will see the planet become increasingly hotter decade over decade. This crisis escalating to a climate catastrophe, a catastrophe that will see many creatures going extinct, including us. Others have agreed with the scientist and the problems he says we face, but give alternate timelines. At a century, the late great Professor Stephen Hawking says we need to change, but we have a little more time to do so. As part of the BBC's science series Tomorrow's World, Professor Hawking said he thought that due to climate change, overdue asteroid strikes, epidemics, and population growth, humans will need to find a new planet to populate within a single lifetime. Hawking said,
I strongly believe that we should start seeking alternate planets for possible inhabitation. We are running out of space on Earth, and we need to break through technological limitations, preventing us living elsewhere in the universe.
He did, however, revise his initial date from a century to 1,000 years before his death, one date that is currently being pushed by climate scientists, lobbyists, and many other people who want to see policy changes and use climate change and global warming as a platform to do so, is the 30-year prediction. They say that recent climate change doomsday reports predict the end of human civilization in a mere 30 years. The report, terrifyingly titled Existential Climate-Related Security Risks, glimpses 3 decades into the future to the year 2050, and the results are grim. Author David Spratt, a researcher into climate change, and Ian Dunlop, former chairman of the Australian Coal Association and chair of the Australian Greenhouse Office Experts Group on Emissions Trading, proposed a scenario in which global emissions and climate threats are ignored and the trajectory of environmental collapse goes unchecked. They echo the warning of sea level rises and harsher temperatures, and say that 1 billion people may need to be relocated, and that we will see a scale of destruction which is beyond our capacity to model. In all likelihood, it would be the end of human civilization. And if you think this prediction was pessimistic, then the next will horrify you, as one of the latest timeframes given to the end of days scenario is only a decade. Guy McPherson, a biology professor at the University of Arizona, says the human destruction of our own habitat is leading towards the world's 6th mass extinction. He claims that there is no point trying to fight climate change. We'll all be dead in the next decade, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. Instead of fighting, he says we should just embrace it and live life while we can. His grim statement on the current situation is as follows: it's locked down. It's been locked down for a long time. We're in the midst of our 6th mass extinction. These futures scare most, and we don't want to think about a future that sees the planet become uninhabitable for the future generations. But we shouldn't worry. It's not too late. There is something that can save us: carbon credits and the other proposed money collecting schemes that will save the Earth. This is when conspiracy enters the story and people begin to ask if this is a scam. On June 6, 2017, Breitbart News posted an article which they titled "Global Warming is a Myth," say 58 scientific papers in 2017. The article tells that the ideas being shared by scientists are nothing more than alarmist musings designed to create a climate, excuse the pun, of fear. What these 58 papers argued is that the alarmist version of global warming, aka catastrophic anthropogenic global warming, CAGW, is a fake. They point out how different experts from around the globe, experts from such countries as China, Russia, Canada, the US, Italy, have all been looking closely at different aspects of the global warming puzzle in their various regions and using different timescales, and that they have come to a different conclusion in their peer-reviewed scientific studies. The reports they published point to there being no evidence to support the current global warming scare story. They use a series of graphs which map the climate over the late 20th century and early 21st century. What these graphs show is neither dramatic nor unusual nor scary. The records show that temperatures in the Northern Hemisphere were warmer in the early 1400s than they are today. They also point to a study from Li et al. Showing that China was also much warmer 8,000 years ago. In total, there are 80 graphs, all of which show in different ways why the scares about global warming has been horribly exaggerated, and the evidence just doesn't support being something unusual or that it will be a major problem in our future. The primary influence on warming appears to be solar activity. Few, if any, entertain the notion that carbon dioxide levels have much to do with it. Those that support this idea, or conspiracy, say that this is just a move to tax the last thing that is free on this planet, the air. The powers that be already take their piece of everything we eat and drink and the ground we live on, and now they're going to charge us for the air that we breathe. Others have theories that form the basis for darker agendas, plans like Agenda 21 and depopulation and the relocation of populations around the planet by a secretive group. They point to other evidence like the Georgia Guidestones, but that is a whole new conspiracy, maybe for another time. What do you think about climate change? Is it fact or fiction? How long do you think humanity has left? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget, I still have my giveaway running, so leave a comment below, subscribe, and head on over to Twitter and give me a follow. If you like what I do here on the channel, hit that red button, like, and share. You can catch the latest by searching We Are If. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.